The container that became a sanctuary. I will never forget the sound of that padlock. It was a dry, short click, but it echoed inside me like a judgment. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from a strange awareness that something much bigger was about to happen. It was 11:40 a.m. The Danakil desert sun beat down on the metal of the container as if it wanted to melt everything around it. Inside, 23 people breathed the hot, heavy air, unaware that these would be their last hours of freedom. Outside, I held the key while my men walked away to the vehicles. My name is Jonas Tesfal. At that time, at 37 years old, I was a special operations commander in the Eritrean army. 15 years of impeccable service, medals, promotions, commendations, a career built without room for doubt or hesitation. And for a long time, I believed that nothing could shake me. But what happened in that abandoned container defied any military explanation or human logic. I spent years trying to convince myself that it had never happened, but the nights wouldn't let me forget. The faces wouldn't either. And the truth caught up with me precisely where I never imagined finding it. On my knees, crying like a child before a God I sought without understanding. This is my testimony, the testimony of a man who locked up Christians hoping to see them die. But, in some way, I still struggle to understand. It was I who found life that day. If God could forgive what I did, then no one is beyond the reach of His grace. There is no sin too great for the blood of Christ to cleanse. There is no past too dark for His light to penetrate. And although it's my story, it also belongs to those 23 people who prayed for me while I condemned them. It's the story of a shipping container that became a makeshift temple, and the story of a persecutor who ended up becoming a witness. When men lock doors, God opens the heavens. I grew up in Asmara, the capital of Eritrea. Being a soldier wasn't just a profession in my family. It was an inheritance. My father served. My grandfather served. My great-grandfather fought for independence. Loyalty to the regime wasn't questioned. It was something that ran in the blood. At 19, I entered the Sagwa Military Academy. 2 years in the desert, facing brutal training, endless marches, sleepless nights, collective punishments, absolute obedience. There I learned not to question, not to feel, not to show anything. Weakness was betrayal. Compassion, then, was unthinkable. I graduated at 21, among the top of my class. At 23, I was already commanding operations on the border. At 26, I received my first medal for having neutralized a cell considered subversive. Later, I discovered it was just 12 young people studying the Bible. At 30 came my most specific mission, to repress illegal religious practices within the country. In Eritrea, only 3 traditions are officially recognized: the Orthodox Church, Catholicism, and Islam. Everything else is forbidden. And evangelical Christians, those who meet in humble homes, sing loudly, pray fervently, and share everything, were seen as a direct threat. For 7 years I carried out orders without a second thought. I raided houses in the middle of the night, dragged entire families away, conducted endless interrogations, confiscated and burned Bibles, destroyed hymn books, shut down clandestine meetings, and took pastors to places from which they never returned. And all this while believing He was protecting the country, believing they were dangerous infiltrators, believing that their faith concealed political plots, believing in many things, all false. The biggest lie of all was the one I told myself before going to sleep, that I was different from those I arrested, that I was the strong one, the righteous one, the one who was doing the right thing. Today I see that it was just pride hidden behind the uniform. They say I served something greater than myself, but the truth is much harsher. I was an empty man, serving an equally empty system, chasing after people who carried something I had never felt: true hope. And yet, God, the God of those very people I was trying to destroy, decided to put me on His path. Our unit operated from a military base on the outskirts of Asmara. 52 men under my direct command, all trained to hunt down insurgents, all obedient, all blind, like me. We had informants in practically every village. Neighbors reported suspicious meetings. Often it was family members turning in relatives, fearing reprisals. Local authorities received bonuses for each arrest made. It was an entire system built to crush any faith that wasn't on the approved list. Our methods were almost always the same. We observed for weeks. We discovered who was leading, and then, before dawn, always before dawn, we raided the houses, separating men from women, collecting everything related to faith, and if anyone was considered a leader, they were taken away immediately. I commanded each step with precision, without hesitation. To me, they were all agitators, threats, rebels who insisted on not bowing to the regime. It never occurred to me to stop and ask why they risked so much for it, why they continued singing, even while being watched, why they spoke of Jesus even after days of interrogation. I never thought that maybe they had found something that I had never found. But God is patient, and even though I was hard-hearted, blind, and arrogant, He was preparing me for the lesson that would change not only my life, but my eternity. It was July 2017. We received a report that seemed like just another common case. A Christian group active in the mining town of My Mine, about 80 km from Asmara. The informant said they had been meeting 3 times a week for 6 months. They sang until late at night. They performed baptisms in secret. They distributed smuggled Bibles. The High Command did not hesitate. Eliminate the group and arrest the leaders. Total discretion. And I knew what that meant. Total discretion was always code for, do whatever you have to do, as long as nobody sees. I spent 3 weeks observing My Mine. I identified 3 houses they used. I wrote everything down. Faces, names, days, times. I made detailed reports. The leader was called Dawi, a simple 42-year-old man, a gold mine worker. He had a wife and 4 children. But according to the system, his crime was only one, loving Jesus without hiding it. I planned the operation for a Tuesday at dawn, a weekday, a quieter city, fewer eyes, fewer questions. On August 22, 2017, at 3:30 a.m., we left the base. 4 military trucks, 18 armed soldiers, radios checked, flashlights, vests, plastic handcuffs, black bags to collect Bibles and hymn books. I was leading everything, and I had absolutely no idea that that operation would change my life forever. The sky was still dark when we set off. The streets of Asmara were empty, silent, and only a few stray dogs saw us pass. Nobody else. The dirt road leading to My Mine snaked through the mountains. 3 hours of travel, only the sound of engines and the wind hitting the tarps of the trucks. Absolute silence. It was always like this before an operation. Total concentration, mental preparation. Nobody spoke. I was in the first truck, reviewing the map repeatedly, even though I knew every curve by heart. Location of houses, escape routes, roadblocks, everything calculated with precision. We arrived at My Mine at 6:25 a.m. The sun was beginning to rise on the horizon. The village was still asleep. A few chickens pecked at the ground. A donkey tied to a post watched us pass. I divided my men into 3 teams, 6 for each house, simultaneous attacks at my signal. At 6:40 a.m., I gave the order. Doors burst open. We shouted orders, flashing lights, weapons drawn. In the first house, 12 people were sitting in a circle, Bibles open, steaming cups of tea, a man leading a prayer. They did not resist, only raised their hands in peace. In the second house, 7 people, 4 women, 3 young men. One tried to lock a room where they kept Bibles. My soldier broke down the door. We confiscated 143 Bibles in Tigrinya, all illegal. In the third house, Dawi's, we found 4 people. He, his wife Senait, and 2 leaders from other communities gathered to plan a youth retreat. On the table were maps, lists of names, and handwritten hymn books. We took everyone out of the house and lined them up against the wall, handcuffed with plastic zip ties. Some were crying, others were praying silently. Dawi looked me in the eyes and said, "Commander, you too are loved by God." I turned my back, unable to respond. I took 23 people to the trucks, 8 men between 17 and 68 years old, 9 between 19 and 65, and 6 elderly people, 3 of whom had mental health problems. The neighbors began to come out of their houses, watching from a distance. Nobody approached. Nobody asked anything. Everyone knew the significance of the presence of military trucks in their city. At 7:32 a.m., we began the return journey, or at least that's what my men thought. I had no plans to take them to the prison in Asmara. The High Command had made it clear, maximum discretion, no public records. And I knew a place where no one would ask questions, where everything could disappear without a trace, a place we had used before. 40 minutes later, I turned east. My men looked at me confused. "Commander, the base is to the west." "Change of plans," I said. "Direct order from the colonel." No one questioned it. We drove for another 2 hours, entering the Danakil Desert, one of the hottest and most inhospitable places on the planet. Temperatures above 50 degrees in summer, landscapes of salt and sulfur, active volcanoes, no vegetation, no life. The perfect place for no one to see anything. At 10:05 a.m. we arrived at the exact coordinates, 14°15 north, 40°30 east, in the middle of nowhere. There, half buried in the hot sand, was the container. An abandoned metal block, 6 meters long by just over 2 meters wide and high. Corroded steel, faded orange paint, no windows, no ventilation whatsoever, just the 2 rear doors. We had found it years before during a patrol. Nobody knew how it had ended up there, probably the forgotten remains of some transport train. We only knew that it was useful for what the regime called special procedures. We called him Oven. It wasn't an exaggerated nickname. It was exactly that. A gigantic oven in the heart of the desert. It had already been used 3 times. Twice with political prisoners, once with those accused of espionage. None of them lasted more than 48 hours, and on that day, 23 Christians would be placed there, under my orders. I stopped the trucks about 100 meters away. The heat was stifling, even with the windows open. The thermometer read 44 degrees, and it was still just after 10 in the morning. "Unload it," I ordered. My soldiers began to unload the prisoners from the trucks. Many were stiff, exhausted, their legs still numb from the journey. Some helped the elderly to walk, and no one shouted, no one complained. They sang, a hymn in Tigrinya, soft, vibrant, even interrupted by thirst and fatigue. "Shut up!" I yelled. The volume decreased, but the singing did not stop. We walked towards the container. One of the younger soldiers, with a troubled expression, asked, "Commander, how long will they be staying there?" "As long as it takes," I replied coldly. When I pulled open the container doors, the hot air that escaped was like opening a preheated oven. The interior was completely dark, the smell of old metal mixed with something heavier, as if death had been trapped there for too long. "Come in," I ordered. They formed a silent line. Some had to duck to get through. The elderly almost tripped. One woman fell to her knees, and 2 men carefully helped her up. When all 23 were inside, there was almost no room to breathe. Some sat, others huddled together, others knelt. None could stand fully upright. Dawi was the last one. Before closing the doors, he looked at me. He had tears in his eyes, but they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of something that, at the time, I couldn't explain, and that deeply troubled me. "Brother Jonas," he said, using my first name. I had never told him my name before. "I will pray for you every day, and when I get out of here, I hope I can hug you like a brother." His words hit me like an unexpected blow. "You're not leaving here," I replied curtly. "None of you are." He just smiled. "Then I will pray for you." From heaven, I slammed the doors shut. The metal groaned under the impact. I engaged the reinforced lock, used only in high-risk operations. I turned the key. A firm click. The end. And then, from inside the container, a louder chant began. 23 voices united in a hymn that marked my soul forever. "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me." I turned my back. "Let's go." We returned to the trucks and set up camp about 500 meters away, close enough to keep watch, but far enough away that, theoretically, we wouldn't hear anything anymore. My orders were clear. We would wait 72 hours. Guard shifts every 6 hours. No one would approach the container for any reason. Let the desert do its work. My soldiers nodded. Some seemed uneasy, but no one questioned. We set up the tents, lit a fire to cook, distributed rations and water. Everything professional, everything routine, as if nothing were wrong. At that moment, we were leaving 23 people to die just 100 meters away. The sun rose mercilessly in the sky. At noon, the thermometer read 46 degrees. 2 hours later, 48 degrees. The metal of the container reflected the sun so intensely that touching it would burn the skin. I did quick calculations in my mind. 23 people, 6 MSAU, no ventilation, each breath consuming the little oxygen available. Estimated survival time, 36 hours, maybe less. The next morning they would probably be silent, On Friday, we would open it and find only bodies. That was the plan. But God had other plans. The first afternoon passed in watchful silence. Some soldiers rested in their tents. Others played cards under an improvised tarp. I reviewed reports on my laptop, connected via satellite to the base. At 5 p.m., the sun began to set. The heat subsided to 42 degrees, and the sky turned orange and purple. The Danaquil Desert is beautiful at dusk, but no one would imagine that one of the deadliest places on the planet could be so beautiful. At 7 p.m., darkness fell like a curtain. The temperature plummeted rapidly. In the desert, the night is cold. It could reach 12 or 15 degrees C. I thought about the container. The metal retained the day's heat, but eventually it would cool down. Inside, it was probably still around 35 degrees C, stuffy, suffocating, each breath a struggle. At 9:30 p.m., I was reviewing the evacuation plan for Friday when Team, a 23-year-old, came running back from the guard post. "Commander, you need to hear this. Come with me." I followed it to the perimeter. The dark silhouette of the container stood out against the silent night. And then I realized there was a sound. Faint, distant, almost imperceptible. A song. "Can you hear them, Commander?" Team asked. I clenched my teeth. How was that possible? They had been there for more than 12 hours, without water, without fresh air, and they were still singing? My heart began to beat faster. I grew up in a Christian family before joining the army, and I immediately recognized that melody. It was Psalm 23, the same one my grandmother used to sing when I was scared. "Soldier, I love you," she would say. And even in her absence, those words echoed in my mind. I walked alone to the container, without touching the doors, but close enough to hear. Their voices were weak, hoarse with thirst, but firm. "Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me." I placed my hand on the metal. It was warm, not scorching like in the middle of the day, but warm. And from inside, just inches from my skin, those 23 people continued singing. I stood there, unable to speak, unable to move. Something was happening there that no military calculation could explain. Something that would change everything. Something inside me started stirring that night. It wasn't pain, nor tiredness. It was a deep discomfort, as if something was poking me from the inside, insisting that I pay attention. I went back to camp, trying to ignore it. But sleep, impossible. I spent the night tossing and turning in bed, staring at the tent ceiling, listening to my own heart beating too fast. The second day dawned with a merciless blue sky. By 6 in the morning, the sun was already blazing. At 8, it was 40 degrees C. At 10, 44 degrees C. By noon, we reached 48 degrees. The container glowed from a distance like an incandescent metal plate. The air around it seemed to tremble. Up close, you could feel the heat radiating, as if it were coming from an open oven. During breakfast, my soldiers spoke quietly, exchanging uneasy glances. Some even avoided looking in the direction of the container. "Commander," one of them asked, "how much longer?" "See you Friday morning," I replied. "It's just that the men are nervous. They say they heard things last night." "What things?" "Songs. And other things." I frowned. "What other things?" The soldier hesitated before answering. "Some say they heard another voice. Not the prisoner's voice. A deeper voice. As if there was another person inside." I stood up suddenly. "Enough. I don't want to hear any superstitions. It's the heat messing with your heads. Drink water. Stay focused at work." But inside, I was falling apart. YEUI had heard something too. The night before, when I approached the container, I swore I heard a voice that didn't match the others. A deep voice. Resonant. As if someone enormous were speaking to them. "It's the heat," I kept repeating. "It's just the heat." But I wasn't convinced. At 3 p.m. on the second day, the desert reached its peak. 49 degrees in the shade, and there was no shade there. I walked to the container with an infrared thermometer in my hand. I needed to measure the exact temperature. I pointed the device at the metal doors, 60 degrees on the external surface. The heat was so intense that the air rippled. There was no logic that would allow anyone to be alive inside. Even so, I brought my face closer, pressed the side of my head against the scalding metal, and almost burned myself. But what I heard on the other end made me recoil, as if I'd been electrocuted. Prayer. No singing this time. Prayer. weak but clear voices. One was praying in Tigrinya, another in Arabic, another in a language I had never heard before. All were calm. There were no screams. There were no cries for help. There was no despair, only prayer. I dropped the thermometer without realizing it. It fell on the sand. I took a few steps back, trembling. Then I ran all the way to the campsite. That afternoon, I didn't speak to anyone. I locked myself inside my tent, breathing deeply, trying to find explanations. I spent hours reading medical manuals on surviving extreme heat. I researched cases of people without water for more than 48 hours in temperatures above 50 degrees C. Nothing, no exceptions. All the studies said the same thing. Within 24 to 36 hours, the body begins to collapse. Severe dehydration, organ failure, delirium, unconsciousness, then death. And yet, 32 hours had already passed. And they prayed. The second night was worse than the first. I was trying to convince myself that everything had an explanation when, around 8 o'clock at night, 3 of my soldiers approached my tent. When 3 of my men came to my tent that night, I could tell from their faces that something had changed. They weren't just tired or hot, they were terrified. "Commander, we need to talk," said the oldest. I asked what had happened, and the answer was straightforward. They felt that things had gone too far, that we needed to open the container before the scheduled date. "We open on Friday," I replied, annoyed. "But Commander, they're still singing. How can anyone sing after almost 2 days in there? Some of the men think it's not normal. They think it's supernatural." That word hit me like a punch. Supernatural. I ordered everyone out of my tent, but as they moved away, the truth caught up with me. They were simply saying aloud what I had been trying to silence inside. Something there didn't make sense, or it made too much sense, but I didn't want to admit it. At midnight, unable to stand still, I left my tent. The desert was silvery under the almost full moon. So silent it felt like holding my breath. I walked to the container as one walks to a grave. I placed both hands on the cold metal. I closed my eyes, and then I heard it again. But this time, it wasn't the same weak, tired singing from the other times. It was harmonious, strong, impossible. It seemed as if there were more voices than people inside, as if an entire choir had descended into the middle of that desert to sing with them. I opened my eyes in fright, looking around, but there was only sand and darkness. Even so, the music continued, piercing through the metal as if the container itself had become a sounding board for their faith. That sound stirred something within me. It wasn't music of despair. It was praise. Praise inside a metal furnace in one of the hottest places on the planet. Praise where there should only be fear and death. There, kneeling on the coarse sand, I realized I wasn't afraid of what would happen to them. I was terrified of what would happen to me if God was truly protecting those people I was trying to destroy. I returned to camp like a man who had seen more than he should have. I didn't sleep a wink. The third day dawned with the desert in motion. The wind whipped up the sand. Visibility was poor, and the heat had been intense since early morning. By 9 a.m., the temperatures were already above 40 degrees Celsius. I gathered all the soldiers and gave the final orders. Tomorrow, at 6 o'clock sharp, we will open the container. Prepare body bags, fuel, everything. The report will be the standard one. Death due to worsening medical conditions during transport. They nodded, but no one believed what I was saying. They all stared at the container as if observing something living. Before dismissing them, I added, "And whatever we find tomorrow, this should never be discussed with anyone. Understood?" The rest of the day was heavy. Hardly anyone spoke. The wind whipped against the container, making a strange sound, as if someone were scratching the metal from the inside. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the wind suddenly stopped, and in that dry silence, we heard a voice. It wasn't coming from the container. It was coming from above. We all looked at the sky at the same time. Nothing, just empty blue. But the voice had been clear. "I'm with them." Team fell to his knees, trembling. "It is he. It is God." I told everyone to be quiet, trying to rationalize. "It's just the wind," I said, but even I didn't believe it, because I had heard it too. And it didn't sound like wind. It sounded like someone. Nobody slept that night. We all stayed around the campfire, watching that container as if it were an altar. At 2 in the morning, something happened that none of us could ever explain. A light appeared above the container. It had no helicopter, no engine, No shape. Just a light suspended in the air, shining, moving slowly, as if observing everything. 5 soldiers saw it. I saw it. It stayed there for a few minutes and then simply vanished into thin air. And we sat there, staring at that empty space, aware that what we were witnessing did not belong to this world. The camp was silent, as if the desert itself were holding its breath. At 5:30 a.m. on the 4th day, I gave the order. Get ready. The soldiers moved silently, almost reverently. They prepared shovels, bags, and cameras to document what we believed would be the end. But deep down, something in me knew that nothing would be the same again. I picked up the padlock key. My hands trembled, not from cold, but from a tension I had never felt before. It was 6:22 a.m. on August 25th, 2017. The sun rose on the horizon, tinging the sky pink and orange. The desert, which had seemed so merciless, awoke in a calm that contrasted sharply with the horror we were about to witness. I walked to the container with 6 soldiers beside me. The others formed a semicircle 20 meters away, watching hesitantly. Each step towards those doors weighed more than any march I had ever made. Something invisible seemed to resist every movement. I reached 3 meters from the metal. It seemed ordinary, rusty, inert. "Commander?" whispered one of the soldiers, his voice trembling. "Silence," I replied, tightening my grip on the key. The lock was cold, surprisingly icy for the desert at that early morning. I put the key in and turned it. A clear click echoed. I took a deep breath, held the doors, and counted. 1, 2, 3. We pulled together. And then came the impossible. A blast of cold air exploded out of the container, cutting our faces like a winter wind. The soldiers holding the doors staggered. One fell onto the sand, another dropped his flashlight, screaming. I remained motionless, unable to react. The light from my flashlight revealed something none of us could have imagined. The 23 prisoners were alive, kneeling in a circle, hands raised, eyes closed, in silent prayer. Their tears glistened in the light, but there were no signs of suffering. Their lips, skin, and eyes were intact. No fainting, no despair, no sign of dehydration. They seemed to awaken from a deep, restorative sleep, serene as if they had been cradled by the very hand of God. Behind me, I heard someone vomit. Another fell to their knees, murmuring prayers they didn't even know they knew. A third ran towards the camp, shouting nonsensical words, unable to process what they were seeing. I stood there, the flashlight trembling in my hands, completely paralyzed. 72 hours, 3 days, over 50 degrees during the day. Scorching metal, no food, no water, no fresh air. All the laws of biology said they should be dead. All the medical manuals guaranteed. No one would survive. And yet they were there, alive, at peace, praying. At that moment, I felt something break inside me. Fear, awe, shame, and at the same time, hope. What we were witnessing did not belong to this world. All the manuals, all the scientific studies, all the past experiences said the same thing. Nobody survives this. But there they were, not only surviving, but calm, serene, as if that container wasn't a prison, but a sanctuary. I took a hesitant step inside. A cold air enveloped me. It wasn't my imagination. It was real cold, so icy it felt like it had been taken from a freezer. I touched the inner wall. Icy, solid, impossible. "This can't be happening," I whispered in disbelief. One of the young men opened his eyes. He was about 25 years old, the same one who had sung in the truck. He looked directly at me, and a peaceful smile lit up his face. "He was with us the whole time," he said firmly, without weakness or hoarseness, without any sign of thirst or fatigue. "Who?" My voice barely came out, hoarse with disbelief. "The one who promised never to abandon us," replied a middle-aged woman, opening her eyes for the first time. Another prisoner, an elderly man, said, "The one who walks through the fire with us." One by one, the 23 opened their eyes and looked at me. There was no fear, no hatred. There was compassion, a kind of compassion that crushed me from the inside. "Commander Jonas," said Dawit, the leader, "we saw you pray every night. We saw you kneel in the sand." My heart raced. This was impossible. Those in the dark couldn't see me. "Out there, not with our eyes," Dawi continued. "He showed us his heart, and we prayed for you." My mind went blank. "This isn't real," I screamed, my voice cracking. They're delirious. These are hallucinations from dehydration. The older woman spoke again, the same one who had told me, "May God forgive you, son," 3 days earlier. "Son, touch my skin, look at my lips, see my eyes. Do I look like I'm suffering?" I approached, trembling, illuminating her face with the flashlight. Hydrated skin, rosy lips, clear eyes. No sign of despair, pain, or thirst. "How is that possible?" I asked, almost whispering. "Living water," she replied. "The water that quenches thirst forever." I looked around, searching for a human explanation. Some crack through which air could enter, condensation, any flaw in the structure. Nothing. Just solid steel, sealed floor, closed ceiling. And yet, cold, life, peace. I staggered out of the container, trying to breathe, trying to return to reality. But my soldiers surrounded me, stunned. They were all talking at once. "Commander, how are you still alive? What kind of air is that? This is a miracle. God is here." I raised my hands, asking for silence, but my mind was spinning uncontrollably. There was no plan, no explanation, no way to control what had just happened. "Get them out of here," I ordered finally. "Carefully." The soldiers hesitated. And then, "Commander? Then we'll take them back." "Back? Where to? Where did we find them?" one of them asked, incredulous. "We let them go. We let them go," I repeated, disbelief still heavy in my voice. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in years, pure reverence. After all that, I turned to the soldier with suppressed anger. "Do you want to stay with them? Do you want to face what protected them for 3 days in that oven?" The soldier retreated. "No, Commander." I took a deep breath. "Then do what needs to be done. Get them out of there. Give them water. Give them food. Get the trucks ready. We'll be there in an hour." One by one, the 23 prisoners emerged from the container. Some took small sips of water. Others barely touched it. It was as if their thirst had vanished. We sat them down on the sand and offered them biscuits from the military rations. Some ate. Others simply smiled, serene. Dawid approached me. "Commander, may I speak with you?" I looked at him suspiciously. "What do you want?" "I want you to know one thing," he said. "We don't hate soldiers. We don't hate you. You are victims of a system that doesn't know the truth. I don't need sermons." It wasn't a sermon. It was a testimony. For 3 days in that container, we never felt hot. We never felt afraid. We were thirsty, but never desperate, because he was with us. "Who?" I asked, almost whispering. "Jesus, the Son of God, the one who died for you, the one who still loves you, even when you are persecuted." His words pierced me like arrows, penetrating my hardened heart. I turned away, unable to hear any more, but every syllable echoed within me. At 8 a.m., all 23 were in the trucks, this time without handcuffs, this time sitting comfortably, in respectful silence. Before leaving, I returned to the container alone. I touched its walls. Cold, completely cold, as if the scorching sun of the last 3 days had never reached there. I knelt in the same place where they had prayed. I closed my eyes, and for the first time in 30 years, spoke to God. It wasn't an elegant prayer. It was a torn cry from the soul. "Lord, if you are real, if you truly protected them, then I am your enemy, and I don't know what to do about it." No audible answer came. No light, no voice from the sky. Only a thought that didn't seem to be mine. "Lost son, I'm waiting for you." I left the container crying. I got into the first truck. I gave the order to leave. As we drove away from the Danakil desert, I looked in the rearview mirror. The container shrank in the distance, but what had happened inside grew in my heart. I had witnessed something that science couldn't explain, something the army couldn't control, something my mind couldn't deny. I had seen the hand of God protecting his children. For the first time in my life, I wanted to be on the side of the protected. We returned to base in silence. No one spoke during the 3-hour journey. My soldiers glanced sideways, waiting for orders, explanations. I had none. Upon arriving, I went straight to the colonel. I gave him my report. The operation failed. The prisoners escaped during the transfer. He stared at me, incredulous. 23 people escaped in handcuffs. "Yes, sir. Failure. You have been under my command for 15 years. You have never failed." What really happened? I could have told the truth. I could have said that, for 3 days I witnessed the impossible. that I saw lives preserved by the one who controls all things, that what science said was inevitable death, God's love transformed into protection, peace, and life. But no, at that moment I simply nodded, my heart still trembling, my mind still trying to comprehend, and something inside me knew I would never be the same. I could have told the colonel about the cold container, the living prisoners, the impossible peace I saw inside, but something stopped me. Was it fear, shame, disbelief? I don't know. I take responsibility for my silence. He signed the report without questions. Don't fail again, Commander. No, sir. I had already failed, and the worst was yet to come. The following weeks were a silent hell. During the day, I carried out orders, participated in arrests, interrogations, operations. At night, the desert haunted me. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the container. I saw the kneeling faces. I heard the singing. I felt the cold air enveloping me. I searched for scientific explanations, underground air currents, thermal anomalies. I read studies on survival in extreme conditions. Nothing made sense. If this was real, then everything I had done for 15 years, everything, had been against people under the protection of a God I didn't know. And if God was real, then I was the enemy. The nightmares got worse. I dreamt I was inside the container, the heat consuming me, screaming for help, but no one came. I would wake up sweating, trembling, crying. My colleagues noticed. "Tafali, are you all right?" they asked. "Just stress," he lied. But it wasn't just stress. 2 months later, during another operation in Karen, something broke inside me. We had surrounded a house where Christians met on Sundays. At 3:30 in the morning, ready to enter, I heard singing. The same hymns, the same melodies. My body froze. I couldn't give the order. "Commander, shall we go in?" they asked over the radio. My hand was on the button, but no sound came out. Suddenly, I found myself outside, an armed man surrounding a house where people just wanted to sing, pray, and worship in peace. The heavy hand of my gun seemed absurd in the face of that scene. I dropped the radio, stood up, and went to my vehicle. "Commander, where are you going?" they called. I didn't answer. I started the engine and drove off. I left the unit. I left the operation. I left everything. I drove aimlessly, lost in thoughts and memories. After 2 hours, I stopped at a high point overlooking the city. Life down below continued as normal. Mine did not. I could no longer be who I was. That afternoon, I packed a backpack with civilian clothes, money, and documents. At 11 p.m., when everyone was asleep, I slipped out, got into a civilian vehicle I had secretly bought, and headed toward the Sudanese border. No plan, no contacts, no guarantees. Only one certainty: I couldn't go on like this. The man you know as Commander Jonas Tesfala had survived the impossible, witnessed divine protection, and discovered that his life needed a new direction. If you've read this far and feel your heart touched, know this: it's not by chance. God is speaking. It's never too late to change sides, to place yourself under the protection of the one who cares for his children. Share this testimony. Someone needs to hear that there is hope, that there is forgiveness, and that life can change radically when we choose to be on the right side. I crossed the border from Eritrea into Sudan before dawn at 4:07 a.m. on October 17, 2017. I didn't pass through any official checkpoint. I followed a clandestine trail used by the few who knew the region. Each step was fraught with tension. Each stone and each bush seemed to remind me of the life I was leaving behind. I used all my military knowledge to protect myself, ironically fleeing the very system I once served. When I finally touched Sudanese soil, I knelt and cried. I cried for everything I had lost and for everything I had caused. The career I had built, the colleagues I had left behind, the lives I had destroyed. Later at 11 a.m., a truck carrying local merchants took me to the Shagarab refugee camp, a city of tarpaulins and dust, about 40 kilometers from the border. There, more than 12,000 people sought shelter, men and women who, like me, had fled persecution, violence, and religious intolerance. I was registered at the ACNUR office and assigned to Zone C, Sector 4, where I would share a tent with 5 other men, all recent refugees. Nobody knew where I came from. Nobody knew who I was. The first few weeks were a heavy silence. I could barely speak. I was constantly afraid of being recognized. that some refugee there had suffered on my orders. But above all, I felt shame. Shame for having survived when so many around me had lost everything. Shame for accepting humanitarian aid when, at another time, I had been the oppressor. The nights were worse than the days. When I closed my eyes, I saw faces, hundreds of faces of those I had imprisoned, interrogated, and who had suffered at my hands. They all accused me in silence, and I couldn't escape that memory. On the east side of the camp, I could hear soft, persistent chants. They were the hymns I had heard in the container, the same ones that now filled the air of the camp. The Christians gathered under a large tarp, singing, praying, and even laughing, despite having lost everything. I watched them from afar, with shame and a hint of envy, longing for that peace I had never known. They had something I didn't: serenity, faith, and hope, even in the face of pain. In the third week, something unexpected happened. While I was in line to get water, an elderly man approached me, thin, wrinkled from the desert sun, but with eyes that shone in a way I had never seen before. "Are you new here?" he asked in Tigrinya. I replied that I was, and he immediately started talking, asking where I was from and what I did in Eritrea. My heart raced when I said I worked for the government. He simply nodded. "Many of us here do too." Then something changed in his tone. A pause, as if he were choosing his words. "My name is Petros. If you ever want to talk or join our prayer meetings, you are welcome. We meet every night under the large tarp." After that, he left, leaving a lump in my throat. In the following days, Petros continued to appear. He never imposed himself, never pressured me. He was simply there, present, sharing his bread, offering a smile, a gesture of humanity. There was something about him that deeply intrigued me. He harbored no bitterness, no resentment, even knowing my story. His peace didn't come from the absence of pain, but from something greater that I didn't yet understand. Something overflowing with faith, forgiveness, and genuine love. And I, who once held positions of authority, respect, and authority, there I was, broken inside. And that simple man, who had lost everything, carried a peace that I never even knew how to define. It was as if he had found something, or someone, that I had spent my whole life ignoring. On October 28th, exactly 1 month after my arrival at the camp, I finally reached my limit. It was around 7 p.m. when the chanting began under the large tarp. I was still trying to convince myself that it didn't affect me, but the truth is that each note seemed to pierce through my skin. Even though I walked through the valley of the shadow of death, the same song from the container, the same one that echoed in my memories like a living ghost. I got up without thinking and walked to the tent. There were about 50 people gathered. A boy was playing the guitar, even though it was missing 2 strings. But nobody seemed to care. The sound was simple, but full of faith. I sat in the back, in the shade, close enough to hear, far enough to run away if the weight of guilt crushed me. They sang, then they prayed. After that, someone shared a testimony, and then Petros stood up to speak. I don't remember the entire message, but one sentence of his cut through my chest like a sharp blade. Brothers and sisters, no matter how deep the darkness we carry, God rejects no one, not even those who ignored him, nor those who persecuted his people. I felt my eyes burning. My heart began to race, as if some part of me was trying to escape that place. Petros continued, "The Bible tells us about Saul, a persecutor, a man who imprisoned Christians, who approved of killings, a man marked by innocent blood. But God found him, transformed him, and he became Paul, one of the greatest pillars of faith. So, if you are here today thinking you've gone too far, pay attention. If God could transform Paul, he can transform you." The meeting ended. People left little by little. I sat there, motionless, tears dripping onto the dirt floor. I couldn't get up. I couldn't speak. In a short time, everyone dispersed, except Petros. He simply came over and sat down beside me. He didn't ask anything. He didn't rush me. He just put his hand on my shoulder. A gesture so simple, so human, that it brought tears to my eyes that I had been holding back for months. "I know who you were," he said. "I was one of them. I used to chase them." I stammered, ashamed. "I know," he replied with a serenity that disarmed me. "How?" I asked, startled. "The way you look at the ground, The way you try to avoid people. The weight you carry. I've seen that look before. It's the look of someone running away from themselves. I lost my breath. I did terrible things. I imprisoned people like you. I hurt innocent people. I destroyed families. He didn't look away. Do you want to tell me? And there, under a simple tarp, with children running in the distance and the wind raising dust, I poured out everything I was carrying. I recounted my entire past, my military career, the years of religious persecution, the methods, the orders, the doors I broke down, the screams, the fear of others, and my own. I told them about the container, about the deadly heat, about the voices I'll never forget, about the unbearable cold, about the 23 people kneeling, alive, about how it had destroyed the man I thought I was. I told them how I fled the country, how I abandoned everything, how I arrived there without knowing who I was. I spoke for over an hour, maybe 2. Petros heard everything. He didn't interrupt me for a second. He didn't frown. He didn't accuse me. And when I finally finished, prepared to be rejected, he did something I never imagined. He hugged me, tightly. Like a father hugs a son he thought he'd never see again. He cried with me. "Jonas," he said, his voice breaking, "if God forgave Paul, who persecuted the church with hatred, who are you to think he can't forgive you?" "I don't deserve this," I replied, crumbling. "Nobody deserves this," he said. "That's why it's funny. That's why we call it grace," Petros said, with a serenity that seemed otherworldly. "Jesus didn't die for the good for those who think they are self-sufficient. He died for the broken, for those who recognize that they need to be saved." Those words pierced me. I knew I had caused much suffering. I knew I had innocent blood on my hands. And yet, Petros continued, "Jesus took everything on the cross, Jonas. Even what you can't forgive in yourself. He offers a new life. Not because you deserve it, but because he paid what you could never pay." I could barely breathe. "But how can I have a new life after destroying so many?" I asked, my voice faltering. "To surrender, to confess, to repent, and to accept that the sacrifice has already been made." And right there, under that worn-out tarp in the refugee camp, kneeling on the dry earth, I surrendered. I didn't say a beautiful prayer. I couldn't find the right words. I just screamed inside, maybe outside too. "God, if you are real, if you truly care for these people I persecuted, then forgive me. I was your enemy. I hurt your children. I don't know how to live with this. I don't know what to do with the weight of my past. Save me, not only from hell, but from myself." There was no light from heaven. There was no audible voice. There was no vision. But something changed. Something profound. It was as if a crushing weight had been lifted from my chest. After years of torment, I felt peace. Real peace. Peace I had never experienced before. And that night, for the first time in a long time, I slept without nightmares. The following months were about rebuilding. Slow, sometimes painful, but real. Petros became my spiritual guide. He taught me to read the Bible, explained the gospel to me, helped me understand forgiveness. Some mornings were still heavy. Some nights, the guilt returned like strong waves. But I wasn't fighting alone. The Christian community at the camp welcomed me. They called me Brother Jonah. No one treated me like the cruel commander I had been. They invited me to Bible studies, shared food with me, included me in the work of the community garden. That title, Brother, was worth more than all the military decorations I once wore on my chest. 3 months after my decision, Petros encouraged me to share my testimony for the first time. "Your story belongs to God," he said, "and God wants to use it to reach others." On a simple night, sitting before 15 young people from the camp, I told them everything. The container, the miracle, the escape, the emptiness, the surrender. When I finished, no one said a word. The silence felt like a mountain. Then a young man, perhaps 20 years old, stood up slowly. "I know you," he said. My heart shattered instantly. "You arrested my father 2 years ago in Mendefera. He never came back." I felt the world spin. My voice barely came out. "Forgive me. Please, forgive me." He walked towards me. I closed my eyes, expecting a blow, expecting the hatred I deserved. But he hugged me. "My father taught me to forgive," she said, crying. "And Jesus taught me that forgiveness is stronger than revenge." I cried until I had no strength left. In that moment, I experienced human forgiveness, something so powerful that I didn't even know how to receive it. 6 months after my arrival, an international Christian organization visited Shagarab. They were evaluating refugee cases for resettlement in other countries. Petros encouraged me to apply for the resettlement program. "Brother, you are safe here, but God has greater plans for your testimony," he said, with that calm look that seemed to see into my soul. I applied without much hope. I was a military deserter, undocumented, without any clean record. Yet 5 months later, I received the news. I had been accepted into a safe Western European country. I can't say which one, for security reasons, but it was a place where I could finally breathe without fear. On the day of departure, Shagarab seemed to bid me farewell with a heavy silence. The refugee camp had given me more family in a few months than I had had in 37 years in Eritrea. Petros hugged me tightly at the bus stop. "Go and tell what God has done for you. Tell how he transformed the persecutor into a preacher." "I'm not a preacher," I protested, without courage. He smiled, for the first time, with that unwavering confidence. "It's not yet, but you will be." I arrived in my new country in March 2019, 14 months after fleeing Eritrea, an eternity after closing that door in the desert. Everything was new: language, culture, habits, pace of life. I got a simple job in a factory, in the packaging and logistics area. Nothing glamorous, but honest, and enough to send some money to Petros to support the ministry in the field. I entered a small local church, about 200 people, multicultural, welcoming. For months, I just observed. I sat in the back, sang softly, prayed silently, trying not to draw attention, until Pastor Abraham, a Sudanese man of about 45 years old, also a refugee with his own story of transformation, invited me for coffee. "Brother Jonas," he said as we drank coffee after the service, "Petros wrote to me about you." My heart raced. What did he say? He told his story, about the container, the age of 23, his conversion, and asked me to take care of you. "I don't need special care. We all need it," he replied, smiling. "But there's more. Petros believes you have a powerful testimony, and I agree. Would you be willing to share it with the congregation?" No, I wasn't ready. No one is ever truly ready to be used by God, but he uses us anyway. 2 weeks later, on a Sunday in April 2019, I shared my full testimony. I told everything: my life as a military commander, the operations against Christians, the container in the desert, the impossible miracle, my escape, my conversion, my new life. I omitted nothing. I softened nothing. I made no excuses. I simply told the truth. I had been a persecutor of the church, and yet God saved me. When I finished, the silence was absolute. Then a woman in the third row began to cry. Slowly, she stood up and walked to the front, looking me directly in the eyes. "My name is Adam," he said, his voice trembling. The world stopped. She was one of 23. I could barely breathe. "You arrested me. You put me in the truck. You closed the container. Since then, I pray for you every day." I fell to my knees at the altar. "Please forgive me. Forgive me." She knelt before me, held my hands, and in that moment, something impossible happened. I felt the weight of years of guilt dissolve. For the first time, human forgiveness found its way to me, and I understood that God's grace could truly transform even the most lost of hearts. "Jonas, God has already forgiven you, and so have I." Those words fell upon me like a soft thunderclap. I didn't know how to react. She continued, "I didn't deserve to survive in that container. Humanly speaking, I should have died in there. But God had other plans. He saved us to show His power, and He saved you to show His grace." We embraced there, weeping like two people who had somehow passed through the same desert, only on different sides of the door. Soon, the whole church joined in prayer, and at that moment, a profound truth struck me. God hadn't just saved 23 Christians in that container, He had saved 24. I was on His list too, even without knowing it. In the following months, I received messages from 3 more people from that day in the desert. 2 lived in the same country as me. Another had been resettled in Norway. Each one, without exception, called me brother. Each one forgave me. And they all repeated the same testimony, as if they were recalling an event they shared as one soul. Dawood wrote to me from Canada, "Brother Jonas, during those 3 days inside that container, we didn't just pray. We worshipped. And we knew that if God kept us alive, it was because He had a purpose. Now we understand. That purpose was you. Adiam added something that made me tremble inside. On the first night, we heard another voice singing with us. A voice that wasn't ours. Deep, beautiful. It brought peace. Senit, Dawid's wife, told me something even more powerful. I saw a light, not with my physical eyes, but I saw it. A warm light that enveloped us like a hug. And the 68-year-old man, the oldest in the group, sent me a short but unforgettable message. Son, I've been through prison and torture. I know pain. I know fear. But in that container, for the first time in my life, I felt the literal presence of God, and it was the most beautiful thing I've ever experienced. Today, 5 years after that day in the desert, I travel to tell this story. Not because I am someone extraordinary, nor because I deserve a microphone, but because God insists on using cracked vessels so that no one doubts where power comes from. I share in churches, camps, conferences, universities, and even prisons. And invariably, someone approaches at the end, crying, saying, I also thought my past was too big for God to forgive. I also thought there was no turning back. I needed to hear that. And every time I see someone touched by this message, I understand again. There is no darkness that grace cannot illuminate. If you're listening to this now and feel like your story is ruined, that you've passed your prime, that God could never use you, listen. I thought exactly the same thing. And yet He found me. If He reached me in the Danakil desert, He can reach you wherever you are. If this touched you, declare it with faith. God will reach me. And share this testimony, because someone close to you is carrying a guilt that only the cross can remove. The container is still there, lost at coordinates 14 underground, 15 north, 40 underground 30 east, forgotten by the world, rusty, abandoned, invisible, but not to me. And not for 23 people who know that that piece of metal has been transformed into holy ground. In the place where death should have existed, God brought forth life. In that heat that should have destroyed them, God created a refuge. In that utter darkness, He lit a light that none of us could ever extinguish. I often thought about going back there, about standing before those doors again. But Petros always told me, brother, you don't need to go back to the physical container. The real miracle didn't happen in the metal. It happened in your heart. He was right. The container was just the stage. But the miracle, the real miracle, was God transforming a persecutor into a witness of His grace. The real miracle wasn't just the frozen container in the middle of the desert. The real miracle was what God did inside a hard, arrogant, and blind man, me. Because while I locked them up, while I signed papers that destroyed families, while I thought I had authority over life and death, 23 people were on their knees, praying for their persecutor, praying for me. And years later, those same people welcomed me as a brother. Not because I deserved it, but because God answered their prayers. Not in the way they expected, nor in the time they imagined, but He answered them. Today, my life is simple. I work in a factory, live in a small apartment, participate in a men's ministry at my local church, and share my testimony when someone asks me. I no longer wear a uniform, have titles, or hold authority. There are no brilliant careers, no military honors, and no orders to give. But I have something I've never had before. Peace. Peace be with God. Peace be with who I was. Peace with who I am today. And this peace is worth more than any medal, because now I know. Even when I closed that metal door to destroy lives, God was using that moment to save mine. Maybe you're not trapped in a steel container. Maybe your prison is something else. Maybe it's an addiction you can't overcome. Maybe it's a depression that suffocates you. Maybe it's anxiety. Maybe it's guilt. Maybe it's bitterness. Maybe it's a past you can't face, and you feel the heat of life burning. You feel there's no way out. You feel alone. But I've learned something that I want to share with you now. You are never alone when you cry out to God. The 23 were not saved because they were perfect. They were not protected because they had merit. They were saved because they cried out, and because God is faithful. The God who cooled the container in the desert is the same God who can restore your soul today. The God who transformed a persecutor into a preacher is the same God who can rewrite your story. But there is one step that took me 37 years to take, Render see. Surrendering is not giving up. To surrender is to stop fighting alone. It's about letting go of control. It's allowing God to do what you can't do. The 23 did not escape by breaking the container. They were freed because they surrendered to the God who was with them. And you can do the same now. If you have never given your life to Christ, this could be your moment. You don't need to be in a church. You don't need to know how to pray beautifully. You don't need to understand everything. You just need to have a sincere and contrite heart. Pray with me. Lord Jesus, I acknowledge that I need you. I made a mistake. I strayed. I sinned. Today I surrender my life into your hands. Forgive my past. Restore my heart. Transform my story. From this day forward, you are my Lord and my Savior. Thank you because on the cross, the Lord paid for my sins. From now on, my life is yours. Amen. If you prayed sincerely, then you were born again. Write in the comments, I was born again today. We want to pray for you, celebrate with you, and walk alongside you, and share this testimony. Someone, at this very moment, might think there's no way out, and your simple act of sharing it could be what God uses to reach them. Also, write which city and country you are hearing this from. We want to pray for your nation. And remember, the God who transformed a vessel into a sanctuary can transform your trial into a testimony. He never abandons his own. Never. No matter how dark your valley may be, no matter the weight you carry, he is with you. Inside your container, refreshing your soul, easing the heat, sustaining you until the door opens. Just cry out. Just trust. Just surrender. And you will see God transform your prison into a refuge, your furnace into shelter, your pain into life. God is never late. And when he arrives, even furnaces become shelters.